Welcome to GoPowerCat.com's PowerCat pregame podcast, sponsored by Weddle & Sons Roofing. Now, here's Fitz.
Welcome to this week's edition of the PowerCat pregame podcast, sponsored by Weddle & Sons Roofing. Kansas State is 2-0 on the season after pulling a loss out of the fire and making it a victory at Tulane. They found a way to win, something that other K-State teams have not done when they're in a tussle with a non-conference foe that they should be beating. These Cats did figure out how to win 34-27, and it came down to the final play of the game. But a win is a win. You survive, you move on. And this week you move on to play the Arizona Wildcats in Bill Snyder Family Stadium, but it's not a conference game. This is a non-conference game. It was scheduled before the addition of the Pac-12 schools to the conference. So it stays on the schedule because there was no way to get it filled on short notice. And I think Baylor and Utah had to do the same thing. So this doesn't officially start Big 12 play, but it kind of does when you're playing a Big 12 opponent. And what's odd about this game, as you know, the game's on Friday night, as the Big 12 now is helping stock the Friday night schedule, particularly for Fox, which now has Fox Fridays, and this will be the debut of that new programming format for Fox. They're going all in on Friday night college football. It doesn't make high school fans and coaches and players very happy, but that's the world in which we live. And if you're the Big 12, you want to find every available window you can to be on the biggest channels possible, so you play on Friday night. And this is a big game. Arizona's going through some of the same things that Kansas State has. They struggled to beat Northern Arizona last Saturday at home in Tucson, but they too found a way to win. So now these two teams need to correct their own issues as they face much better teams in the opposing Wildcats. The game kicks at 7 p.m. inside of Bill Snyder Family Stadium, and we have a lot to cover. As always, we'll have our typical panel of Brian Hanley, our football analyst, Ryan Wallace from our staff, who does the opposing team scout. He's got an interesting breakdown of Arizona. And Ryan Gilbert comes in with the betting lines, the top 5 games in the conference. And this week it does include K-State. It's not a bad slate as the last week of non-conference play rolls around, although there is the first official conference game taking place in Fort Worth with UCF and the Horned Frogs. We'll get all that in later in the show. And we'll also hear from Avery Johnson and maybe a little Chris Kleiman if we have time, as we get you ready for the Wildcats against the Wildcats. I petitioned to have them have to change their name, and nobody pays attention to my petitions. So we have cat on cat violence. The trophy is the scratching post. I think we've decided that. I really wish that was a thing. I do wish that was a thing. But let's get started with your breakdown now by bringing in the man, former K-State offensive lineman Brian Hanley. He was Michael Bishop's left guard. And now let's get rolling with our first significant PowerCat pregame podcast of the year, because Big B, this is significant. He is Brian Hanley, former Kansas State offensive lineman, host of the Big 12 Insiders, and our football analyst. This is a big one, Big B. It really is. I feel like the magnitude of this has been amplified for both programs by the fact that they haven't played the way they should be playing.
Right.
And if someone can do it, kind of put it out there on film that they're a pretty good football team, they'll believe they're a pretty good football team.
Yeah. First off, it's going to be a national audience. So it's one thing to play well for yourself, but perception is reality around the country. So to be able to put this on film for everybody to see, this is a big game. Kansas State just hasn't played up to the standards that I think that they're capable of, or that they believe that they're capable of. And this is a big opportunity. You could easily say the same thing about Arizona. I mean, watching some of that film from last week, that was pathetic, to be honest. I mean, it was bad. So I just think this is a big opportunity for both teams, but especially for Kansas State. Kansas State just hasn't been. Last week was a bad football game. And I know fans don't necessarily want to hear that, but it's just the truth. They didn't play well except for the third quarter, but they still won the game. So that's a good thing. I just think this is a big bounce back week for them. I really do.
Yeah, it better be. I mean, we've seen them, as you know, I've discussed with other people. lose those games. So they found a
Yes.
way to win, and they got to this week. And I think this can be a breakout game, but they need to do something to break out. They have really slow starts, both games on the offensive side of the football. They haven't been very good in the first half. They come back and get more done in the second half. What do they need to do in the first half to wake the you know what up?
They got to get out to a fast start. I think I probably pass the football, Fitz.
Yeah.
Throw the ball down the field. Get some explosive plays to get this thing up and running. Look, we know that we can run the ball, or we should be able to run the ball, but that doesn't always it's not always conducive to getting a fast start running the football. I don't disagree with getting a good offensive drive, maybe a 8-9 play drive, but I think you got to throw the football because Arizona is going to be better than the teams that we've played so far. So they're not just going to say, hey, go ahead and run the football, or not have the athletes to be able to stop you from running the football. So you got to open this thing up a little bit and allow for your playmakers to make plays. It's just, and it can't be one guy this week and then another guy next week. We need all of our playmakers to be making plays in this football game.
Well, that gets me to my point that I've been harping on. Do you think we'll see Dylan Edwards, DJ Giddens, and Avery Johnson on the field together a little bit?
I think we need to.
Yeah.
Again, I just don't. If you're not going to do that, then what are we doing? I'll just be flat out honest. If you're not going to put those three guys out on the football field with Jace Brown, with Keegan John, if you're not going to do that and put all of those guys out on the field at the same time, then what's the point in having all these guys? That's what the big boys do. If K-State is not necessarily considered one of the big boys, which I think we are, but if we're not, that's what the other schools do. They put their best athletes out there not at all times, but they put them all out there. And then guess what? Figure out who's getting the football and figure out a way to stop it. K-State has to be able to do that. If you're not, we're just holding ourselves back. But I'll be honest, Fitz, I think it's going to happen. I think we're all upset about it, but I think this is the game where we're going to see things just change and just be totally different.
Do you think this has been neglect, just malpractice, or a plan to not show it very much? I think they did it a few snaps in the opener, but just kind of hold it back for a bigger game. And this certainly fits the bill.
I think it's a plan. And the reason that I think that it's not going to be a good reason is if it's not the plan and this has been malpractice, then I'm going to be so disappointed. That's all I'm saying, man. I'm just being honest. If this is literally not the plan, then it's like, okay, really? And I think all fans would be, everybody should be, wow, how can we think of this and you're not thinking of this? So I just don't believe that to be the case, Fitz. I think it was an absolute plan.
I'm with you. I feel exactly the same way. If it wasn't, what? Why?
Right.
I think something we all neglect to mention is this. Every offensive coordinator has to adjust to who he has on the field. So every year the offense might be a little bit different because, you might have this guy or that guy that can do things differently than the year before. Mm-hmm. So there's always that adjustment for an offensive coordinator. On top of that, and more importantly, Kansas State has a guy this will be his fourth game in his career calling plays, as far as I know. It's going to take him a while, but from talking to him on Wednesday, it sounds like he learned some lessons. He admitted he was way too conservative on the final possession, and I think he knows that some of the play calling has been a little bit odd. So is this something Connor Riley is just going to grow into? And as long as they don't lose, it's okay. Let him grow, and maybe by the end of the season, he'll have a full grasp on what he wants to do and what the team can do.
I would say the answer to that is no. You can't. I mean, I understand he's going to grow into the position, but growing into the position is going to cost us football games. Mm-hmm. It almost cost us on Saturday. Yep. The conservative play calling. Look, we just got rid of that a couple of years back. We just did that, and we had to make a change because of what was going on. And that was a tough change because by all accounts, that was Coach Kleiman's, his really good friend, and if he's going to be willing to do that, then we don't have the time to just sit around and wait for you to grow into the role and hopefully things fall into place. No, go make some stuff happen. You understand what you have on the team, or you should understand, we can't just be conservative. That's just not going to get it done. Not in today's day and age in college football. Teams are scoring points, and especially in this conference, teams are going to score points. And you can't win by playing great defense and just being super conservative or being conservative on offense and just hoping you make enough plays at the end to win a football game. That's not going to work. It's not how football's played these days.
Okay, let's flip it over to the defense.
Mhm.
Oh, Lord, if they do anything like they did against Tulane, Arizona's going to score 7 million points, and Fafita and McMillan are going to have 7,000 yards
Right.
in the game. Boy, they better lock that down. This is a good combo. This is a big-time combo.
Well, the one thing that Northern Arizona did was they bracketed
Mm-hmm.
McMillan all game long. Just, hey, you're not going to throw the football to him. And I would say K-State's got better players on their defense than Northern Arizona did.
Hope so.
So if we choose to bracket them, now Arizona was able to run the football. You know, they ran it for a lot of yards, but they'll get impatient. And they got impatient against Northern Arizona. They kept trying to throw it, and the other guys aren't nearly as good as McMillan is. So that might be part of the plan, Fitz. Let's just bracket the guys. We're good enough to stop you from running the football, and we don't think the other guys can beat us. That happens, they'll be okay. But look, the communication has to be there, because if you're in bracket coverage and somebody doesn't know it, like it seemed that's what happened last week. We're in man and somebody thinks it's zone and guys are running free 35 yards down the field. That's going to be a problem against Arizona.
Brother, I find that just inexcusable, particularly if it's a veteran that you don't know what defense you're in. I don't even know how that happens. I think it's just you're not focused. And I think that explains everything that went on in New Orleans. They just weren't focused. They looked lackadaisical when they ran out of the locker room. They just looked like they were never fully engaged in that game, but flat out blowing assignments, whether it's a receiver just blatantly forgetting to block someone on a running play, which happened, or a defensive back in the wrong thing.
Yep.
Get them off the field. That's my
Right.
thought. If they can't do their duty, let's put in a young guy and let him screw up and get better.
Right. Well, the young guy is going to screw up, but it's not necessarily because he's not giving the effort. He may not know exactly what to do, but it won't be effort, which you can live with that. You can live with, I didn't know what to do versus, you know what, I'm just not going to give the effort, or I'm not paying attention. You know, that there's two totally different things. Having said all of that, K-State's talent was able to win them that football game. But it was a wake-up call. And the one thing that we've talked about several times, Fitz, is the culture in this locker room is they know they played bad and they got away with one.
Mhm.
In years past, K-State does not get away with that football game. Well, they did. And that will wake them up and they will play better. They will be more focused. They will understand, look, as talented as we are, we can still go out here and get beat by other guys. And the talent's only going to get worse. You know, the games that we're not going to run into Tennessee Martins. And I think Tulane is a very talented football team. So we're not going to run into teams like that. It's going to be better competition. And I believe they know that and they understand that. It was probably a tough week of practice, or it's becoming a tough week of practice, and they deserve that. But I think they'll be focused.
Let's be honest. Tulane competes in the bottom part of this conference.
Yes.
I mean, Tulane
Absolutely.
competes with Cincinnati and Houston, Colorado.
I think they finish ahead of them.
Yeah. So if you go to Houston later in the year and struggle, everyone will go, wow, that's bad, but it's a Big 12 game. Well, I think Tulane's a pretty good team, and we're not giving them their full respect, but you just can't have the issues. I don't understand. I've never understood how players cannot be engaged in a game when you only are guaranteed 12 a season. You put in all that work, all that time, all that commitment, all that pain and sacrifice, and then you walk through the motions in a game. I've never understood that, Big B.
No. But as being somebody that participated at that level, I understand it. I mean, there's certain games where you're just like, okay, we're going out here. Let's just not get hurt. I understand it. It's not the right focus. It's not the right attitude, but I totally understand it. I just believe that K-State thought they were that much better than Tulane. That's what I think. And they thought, yeah, we'll figure it out. we'll get out there and figure this thing out. And Tulane was just better than that.
Yep.
And even though they beat us 2 years ago, Tulane was good. And they were really good, and people knew it. Maybe not necessarily at the time, but they turned out to be a really good football team. And things are a little bit different now, but it turns out they still got some pretty good athletes out there.
I remember doing
that was part of the problem. I just believe we're better than them. We'll get through this. Let's get through it healthy so we can get on to Arizona. It happens. It shouldn't happen. I'm not giving them an excuse or anything like that. But I'm just saying it does happen, and it almost bit them.
I remember doing this show 2 years ago for the Tulane game, and Tulane was coming off a pretty ho-hum season, and I was like, this is a good team. They got dudes.
Yep.
Don't get fooled by anything. This is a good team. Now, did I think K-State would lose? No, but it was there, and it's there with this team too. Okay, I need to put on your coaching hat because I've got an interesting question. A lot of us think, I think you do, and I do, K-State will probably do some dime and, just as a base package so you can bracket McMillan all you need to. That means you take a linebacker off the field. Who do you take off the field?
I don't know.
Austin Moore, Des Purnell are kind of the heart and soul, but Austin Romaine has been a beast. They don't win that game at Tulane without him.
Yeah, no, they don't.
They
absolutely don't. The first thing that I would do if we're going to run dime packages, you can't rush 3 people. That much I know for an absolute fact, because I don't care how many defensive backs you have back there. If you're rushing 3 people, they're going to be able to block you, and guys will eventually get open. And this is not the team where you just want the quarterback just sitting back there waiting for guys to get open, because he'll hit them. So that's the one thing. You can't rush 3 people. But if you take a linebacker off the field, I mean, I guess you take Romaine off the field, I guess. But to be honest, figure it out in practice. Whoever's the best in coverage, that's who we're going to go with, and go with those 2 guys. But and that's just what you have to do. But I think the first step, you got to rush 4 people. You can't rush 3. I know that we have a 3-man line, but we saw it last week, Fitz, against Tulane. We're rushing 3. There was nobody within 4 yards of their quarterback on several pass plays 3 and 4 seconds after the snap, because they're doubling 2 guys and the one guy just couldn't get by his guy. And I'm like, yeah, this isn't going to work. And it won't work against Arizona either.
No, it won't. No, it won't at all. Do you think K-State can win this game?
100%. I've said it. I just believe that the coaching staff held back so much, and that this is the game. This is the breakout. This is the classic breakout game for K-State at home. We've all seen it. I've been following or a part of this program for almost 30 years now. We've seen it several times. This is the classic game. Didn't play great. Got away with one. A lot of times that game is a loss, but we got away with one. We come back home playing against a good opponent, and it's a whitewash. I'm not saying we're going to blow out Arizona, but I think we're going to put up some points against Arizona. If you ask me for a score, 44-20, something of that nature, which maybe that's a blowout. I just think K-State's up for a big, big offensive explosion.
I hope you're right. It'll be fun if that happens. We will find out Friday night. Oddly, we'll find out Friday night at the Bill. I'm still not sure how much I like Friday night football, but I do like having my Saturday off, because we all know Fitz likes a day off. If you're not watching the Big 12 Insiders, please do. And after you're done watching this, you might want to go check out the Big 12 Insiders Big 12 Game Day that Big B does every week. It goes up on Thursday morning. It's pretty fun. He has a panel of Big 12 publishers and reporters, and we got someone from 24/7 Sports this week. It's a fun show, informative show. You're doing a great job of that, brother.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
But we will be back after the break. Ryan Wallace is standing by with his take on the Arizona Wildcats as we power forward on the PowerCat pregame podcast, sponsored by Weddle & Sons Roofing.
It's time to take a break for our sponsors. We'll be back with more from GoPowerCat.com.
Weddle & Sons Roofing. Protecting homes, businesses, and providing peace of mind for more than 25 years. Weddle & Sons is your Tesla solar roofing outlet.
Now let's head back to the show for more K-State sports coverage from GoPowerCat.com.
Welcome back to the PowerCat pregame podcast, sponsored by Weddle and Sons Roofers. Make sure if you have issues with your roof, if you're in Kansas or other places, you give them a call. Now we turn to Ryan Wallace, who does our opponent breakdown each week, and trying to break down Arizona might have broken him down because Arizona, like K-State, Wally, is a little confusing right now. They both won easily in the first week, although Arizona gave up a lot of points to a bad New Mexico team, and they both struggled with games they should have won easily in the second week. Here we are. We're ready to start Big 12 opponents, even if it's not officially Big 12 play. Arizona rolls into town. What jumps out the most to you about the Arizona other Wildcats?
Yeah, I mean, the easy going into, let's just say this, going into kind of my studying and research for Arizona, I already knew about T-Mac, about Tetaroa McMillan, and I'd seen the highlights and knew kind of the type of player that he was. But I think I undersold Noah Fifita a little bit. I mean, this kid is really stinking good at the quarterback position. Only 5'11", but as I'm trying to watch games and see, I went back into 2023 when he was given the keys about midway through the season and tried to find instances where teams flustered, right, or frustrated this offense. Something that maybe K-State might go back and try and mimic. He isn't capable of being flustered, Fitz. I mean, there were games where I watched, Deion Sanders in Colorado had a pretty good game plan for him and played a lot of DBs and sent kind of some random blitzes. Oregon State did that. USC had a good game, beat Arizona last year. You don't see that very often from Lincoln Riley on defense. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is there were a lot of different things that have been thrown at him over, let's call it, about a season's worth of work if you count the 2 games this year and 8 or 9 that he started last year. I just don't know if there's a rhyme or reason to doing anything one way versus another, because he's so poised. I mean, it's eerily similar to Mensah from last week, only I think the poise for Fifita is even another caliber up.
Yeah. I mean, you could tell last week Mensah hadn't seen a lot of pressure. It was his second game at quarterback. K-State was able to impact him. I think they probably do the same thing and bring some pressure. We saw Northern Arizona have some success with that. But again, I mean, he can just dice you apart on the back end. I'll be fascinated to see what K-State attempts to do on the back end with him. Talking to Joe Klanderman this week, it was really interesting. He said that the most significant thing he sees about Fifita's game is his field vision. He sees everything pre and post snap. And that would run contrary to the common belief that a 5'11" quarterback can't possibly see downfield because he's tiny compared to his linemen. But he does a good job with that. And if K-State just lets guys run loose, brother, it's going to be an issue. If that guy's named McMillan, it's going to be a huge issue.
Exactly.
That dude is NFL ready right now. He didn't have a good game last week. I think it was just a number of factors involved in that
right.
Partly Northern Arizona's defense, but also, how they approach the game, much like K-State struggled due to their own lack of, whatever that is, whatever oomph they needed. But this is a good offense. They're going to move the ball. They're going to score some points. And it's about limiting damage, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this is the biggest passing test all season. I mean, I really mean that. All year, I don't know if K-State will face another aerial attack that is as good, not just Fifita and T-Mac. I think it goes beyond them, right? I think Patterson, the return specialist that they'll line up in the slot, has elite speed. Their tight end is really good. Montana Lamonius Craig is really good as a second, third option receiver. And Fifita's got great chemistry with all of them. I mean, you talk about T-Mac and the tight end, whose name is escaping me right now. They all played at the same high school, Fitz. They were all in the same graduating class. They just know everything about one another. I'm very interested to see how Joe Klanderman decides to attack, because as you mentioned, I think it's great coming off of the game against Tulane because there are some similarities in terms of the two quarterbacks. Although I think Fifita, as Cole Carmody correctly described on our podcast this week, mentioned how good he is off script. He's better than Mensah off script.
Yep.
He's better than Mensah outside the pocket. That being said, like Mensah, he doesn't want to run. In fact, he might have negative career rushing yards right now because he wants to stay behind the line of scrimmage. He knows his arm is more deadly than his feet. But it's weird because Tulane, I think I honored their rushing attack a little bit more than I feel like I honor Arizona's. Arizona's going to come in here with Quali Conley, who's a San Jose State transfer, came over with Brent Brennan. He was kind of operating as the number 2 in that season opener, but the transfer that they started from New Mexico suddenly has some eligibility issues because he was at Alabama A&M, then he goes to New Mexico. And to me, he was different. Quali Conley is capable, but I don't know if he's even as talented as the running back that K-State saw last week in New Orleans. So to me, it's going to be interesting of what Joe Klanderman wants to do. My hunch, Fitz, and tell me if you think this might be on the right track. My hunch is knowing that you don't have a capable quarterback that's going to beat you with his feet, and the running game isn't to where you have to have those 2 linebackers in the box. I wonder, and again, I watched Deion Sanders do this, and I'm not one to praise Colorado. I guess I'm not praising Deion, I'm praising his DC. They did something where it was a heavy dime, heavy nickel looks. They added a member to their defensive backfield, whether that's Colby McAllister, whether that's Justice James. This strikes me as a great opportunity for K-State to play a more heavy secondary package. Maybe it's Marquis Siegel that you have kind of shadow. You got to have somebody shadowing over the top of McMillan because he's just so good. I was trying to go back and try and see if there was like a comp to him. Quentin Johnston, maybe at TCU, but like in terms of the sheer size, it's like Alan Lazard, Lima Swede. Another one that I thought of, Fitz, and this will give nightmares to K-State because there's a part of me that's like, Arizona could be this on Friday night. Do you remember the game Denario Alexander from Missouri put on K-State in Manhattan? Similar kind of player. The contested catches is what's huge for T-Mac.
Yep.
So I think you've got to have a man over the top to help whatever corner you decide to put on him. And to me, that leaves obviously one man down in that secondary. If you play that dime look, and again, if it's Justice James or Colby McAllister, that would seem to make sense. And then just do what you will with whether you do a 4-man front, 3-man front, and maybe the linebackers are spying. Maybe they're just there to help if there is some sort of delayed handoff. To me, that seems to be the best way to attack Arizona. And even then, Fitz, I don't know if it really slows them all that much. This will be a bend, but don't break game. Just get them into the red zone if you have to and be okay with it. And then buckle down from there and really tighten the hatchets.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a formula for K-State for a while. When you got one of these receivers, you shorten the field so much, it doesn't get easy for them to find open spots on the field. You don't blow coverages often. It's worked in the past. I don't know if that will work with this guy. You just kind of throw it up there and he'll go get it.
He still gets it. Yeah.
It's crazy. He's crazy good. They're fun to watch when they get going. They weren't fun to watch last week, but in general, they're fun to watch. Their defense isn't necessarily fun to watch. They've really struggled, and to their credit, Northern Arizona didn't score as many points, but in reality, Northern Arizona isn't exactly an offensive juggernaut. Their quarterback had some success running, and I thought that was notable. But what do you see from this Arizona defense?
Well, I think on defense, they're without, I think, some difference makers, particularly in the Northern Arizona game, but even going back into the offseason, I think they found out that they're going to be fine this year without him. But I think we're seeing the difference that a guy like Big Bill Norton made as their defensive tackle last year. He's now at Texas, hit the transfer portal, bolted to Texas, got probably a handsome paycheck, and is playing like a 4th or 5th of the snaps that he was playing at Arizona. So there's the pain of the transfer portal. But I mean, he was a guy that's 6'5", like 330 pounds, and was an absolute disruptive force in the middle. And he allowed kind of the exterior of that defensive line to be better and get a little bit more pressure. To me, that's where this team is different under Brent Brennan. And again, some of it isn't even the fault of his. They're just trying to find people that can replicate what some of their assets last year were able to do. I think the linebackers are good. particularly like between the hashes. But when you ask them to get outside, they're not as incapable as I thought Tulane's linebackers were going into last Saturday. But they're much better against the run, I feel like, than they are against the pass. Their season, Jacob Manu is, they remind me kind of like a Trent Tanking type, where they're very sound and they're very seasoned, but I think when it comes down to the athletic ability, maybe they lead something to be desired. And again, similar to last week, I feel like maybe that's where K-State can take advantages with those matchups against the linebackers. And we saw DJ Giddens get a little bit of that. Still haven't seen Dylan Edwards do it. I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that maybe that gets solved on Friday night because they need him. But I digress. The big thing I think for Arizona on Friday night is going to be at safety. The corners are really good. And so that's going to be a problem for K-State's wide receivers who've, again, kind of had trouble separating at times this season. But Dalton Johnston is a kid that was phenomenal for them. I think he's their best kind of all-around talent at safety. So they get Maldonado back, who was a transfer from Northwestern last year that played a ton for them last year. Good player. But I think Johnson has been kind of the guy that they can rely on to do everything in terms of run support and coverage. Sounds like he's not going to be able to go, Fitz. And so their options without him kind of greatly limit where their strengths are. I've heard some rumblings from our friend Jason Shear on the Arizona side at 247. Sounds like they might be experimenting with what they call their dollar package, which is kind of like their dime. But even he has said without Johnston, they're missing something there. And some of the guys that they would have to come in and play his role aren't nearly as good as he is. It's specifically in spying a quarterback with the freakish athleticism of Avery Johnson. So all that to say, again, I feel like this is a game plan that works around K-State running the ball first to then open up the pass. I said that last week. K-State tried it and didn't do it very successfully against Tulane. I think a lot of that had to do with execution. So coming into this week on a shortened week, again, whether it's offense or defense for K-State, I think what took place in New Orleans last weekend is going to end up being a blessing because of who they're seeing on Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to the 22 season when they lost to Tulane, they turned around and beat Oklahoma. They figured out what went wrong and fixed it on a short notice, and they can do the same. Even though they won, there might be less panic if there was, but they've got some stuff to solve, no doubt about it. If you were Connor Riley, how would you address the evolution of this offense? What would you try to roll out for this game to make it a little more challenging for the defense and maybe get your own offense in a better rhythm earlier in the game?
Well, I would like to see a little bit more of Avery Johnson on the run in design quarterback plays. I know that there's always, you run the risk of injury there, but I think if that's the strength of your offense, you kind of have to use it and then know when to pump the brakes on it. But we have barely seen any of it. So to me, I think you've got to utilize his legs more. And then again, I think you've got to incorporate Dylan Edwards. And whether that's as a decoy, whether that's as a rusher, whether that's having him in the backfield and motioning him out, they did it with Deuce Vaughn a ton. Why they haven't done it with Dylan Edwards yet is beyond me. I don't buy what we're hearing about the snaps because I know that they want to get into rhythm, and the more snaps, the more rotations they can have, and this, that, and the other. But, if Avery Johnson is playing all 58 snaps against Tulane and Dylan Edwards is only playing 12, that's still 46 snaps that the coaches could have made a decision to put Dylan Edwards in for and just chose not to. So I don't know if I buy that. He's just too valuable, again, in terms of him with the ball or without the ball. And in a game like this, like I was talking about with how good I think their cover corners are, you might need some help to give Jace Brown and Keegan Johnson and Dante Cephas and those guys some help out there where some eyes might be going inside to Dylan Edwards or Avery Johnson, or DJ Giddens is becoming a pass catcher. They need that more of that. And then the only other thing I'm going to say, Fitz, is to me, this is kind of a make or break game. And again, I'm going to go back to the PowerCat podcast this week. I thought Cole Carmody said it perfectly. Light bulb moment went off in my head. I was like, yeah, I'm with you, Cole. This is a game where if I'm looking at the wide receivers, you're either playing your way onto the field or you're playing your way off of it right now. They can't afford, I think, with as stale as the offense has been at parts through the first 2 weeks, to continue running guys out there that aren't going to make a difference. So whether that's Dante Cephas, having a conversation with Avery Johnson, say, trust me a little bit more and throw the ball my way, whether that's, getting Trey Spivey on the field a little bit more, they've got to find guys that are going to help spread the field vertically, because right now they've proven they can do, the matriculating down the field, but when they need a big play, it hasn't been there. They've got to find guys that can get the big play. And I'll leave you with this though, too, Fitz, on that topic. I say all that and I'm still not alarmed. I'm just not. I'm kind of with Connor Riley on this. There were so many things last week and the week before that I think they knew the right game plan and execution just failed. Now, were there some times, i.e. that last possession of the game, that I thought the play calling was atrocious? Yes. But by and large, I think we haven't really seen this offense, because I think they've known what could beat the two opponents that they've played to this point, and maybe they just haven't executed as well as they needed to. Friday night, to me, unlocks everything. I'm expecting big things on Friday night in terms of the offense that we were expecting to see. Whether we get it in the stat category, I don't know. But in terms of I like what we're seeing. I like what they're trying. I think that finally gets unlocked on Friday night.
Well, he might have a bad hair day once in a while, but doesn't have a bad information day ever. Ever. Yikes. Yeah, it's a bad hair day. Yep. Ryan Wallace, thank you so much. Do you think the Cats win? Well, the K-State Cats.
I do. And I'll just be as brief as I can be with this. If you go back and you watch or look at the paper of the Mississippi State game last year, and I know Arizona did not have Noah Fafita in. They were still kind of experimenting with Jaden DeLaura. He had 5 turnovers in that game. It wasn't pretty for Arizona. So Arizona fans are going to say, that's not the game. That's not really us. But Mississippi State, 145 rushing yards, 39 rushing attempts to 17 passing attempts. It was a rotation of consistent running backs over and over and over again. They had almost 37 minutes time of possession. It was a blueprint to me for K-State. You don't have to be flashy, but I think the more and the quicker they can get the ground game going on offense, it keeps Arizona's offense off the field, and it will unlock the offensive passing attack for Avery Johnson. I think K-State wins, and I think it'll be similar to that Mississippi State score. That was about 31-24. I'm thinking maybe 30-26, somewhere in that range. So just under where the line is right now, but enough to get the job done.
Thank you, Ryan Wallace. I appreciate it very much. That's it for this segment of the PowerCat pregame podcast, sponsored by Weddle and Sons Roofing. Wow, about screwed that one up. And after the break, we'll bring in Avery Johnson to have a little sampling of what he said at Monday's press conference. And then the sports betting segment will wrap us up with Ryan Gilbert. Does he have the Cats covering a 7.5 point spread? Stay tuned for that. We'll be right back.
It's time to take a break for our sponsors. We'll be back with more from GoPowerCat.com.
Weddle & Sons Roofing. Protecting homes, businesses, and providing peace of mind for more than 25 years. Weddle & Sons is your Tesla solar roofing outlet.
Now let's head back to the show for more K-State sports coverage from GoPowerCat.com.
Welcome back to the PowerCat pregame podcast, sponsored by our friends at Weddle & Sons Roofing. Ryan Gilbert is standing by with our sports betting segment as we break down the big games in the Big 12, including Kansas State and Arizona. And speaking of that game, let's hear from Chris Kleiman and Avery Johnson before we get to Gills with their thoughts on where this team's at. And I asked some pretty pointed questions, things that I thought needed to be asked. And I need to remind you also that the PowerCat postgame podcast will be coming at you live after Friday night's game. Brian Hanley and Ryan Wallace are teaming up to handle those duties. A lot of people enjoyed the format last week when the team was in New Orleans. Well, let's do it for this home game. The PowerCat postgame podcast immediately following K-State and Arizona at the Bill on Friday night. Now let's get to Coach Chris Kleiman and quarterback 1, Avery Johnson. Coach, through 2 games, Dylan Edwards has 12 touches, 3 touchdowns, average almost 10 yards a touch. Is this small usage sample lack of familiarity with the playbook or something else going on?
No, I think it's a combination of a couple things. One, we need to find ways to get him the football more. That's a pretty simple concept that I've challenged or addressed with our offensive guys. The second part of it is we are not on the field enough offensively, and last week was more the defense's fault that we were on the field for 55 plays. Typically, we're on the field for 70, 75 plays. The first 2 games we've been at 55. And the first game was basically 40 because Dylan didn't play or starters didn't play the last 15 plays. So we've got to get more plays because I'd like to see Avery with the ball more in his hands. I'd like to see Dylan with the ball more in his hands. I'd like to see what you guys like to see. Let's get the ball downfield to our wide receivers. Well, our sample size is so small in the fact that we've had 55 plays in the first 2 games. And the first game we had basically 40 because we had our backups. And we've got to get drives started so that we can get 70, 75 plays, and then we've got to get off the field on defense. So all the things that you guys are wondering, asking, guys, I'm asking and talking about the same things upstairs, whether it's we've got to clean up our pass coverage. It was not very good on Saturday. It's got to get cleaned up. If it doesn't get cleaned up, doesn't matter what's going to happen. Then we can run the ball for 400 yards. We're not going to win any games because we're giving up explosive plays. We got to find a way to get the playmakers the ball in their hand. But we've got to have the guys on the field to do it, and we got to be on the field. So we've got some things through 2 games, and I told the guys it's whatever after the game, September 7th. Hang in there, man. We're figuring things out on both sides and on teams. We're going to have an opportunity to make some plays. Their kicker was really good. We had one opportunity for a kick return, and we didn't block it right. We had a seam. Every other kick, I think he banged it out of the end zone. Those are opportunities. Their punter was really good. I thought Dylan did a phenomenal job handling the football on punts, but we didn't get anything going because they did a really good job in the kicking game. So all those things, guys, are a combination of us not having opportunities, and we've got to create more opportunities. That's on us as coaches.
Exactly, chart plays, but it would seem after 2 games, Avery's a lot more comfortable outside of the pocket, throwing on the run, doing unconventional things, than actually standing in the pocket. Is there any reality to that?
Well, some of it is forced. Some of it is forced because we're giving up some leakage and some penetration that we got to shore up as well. No difference than what we're doing, talking about on defense. We've got to shore up our pass protection, but been really pleased. I mean, the play he made to Oakley one time, getting out on a 3rd and 5 early in the game, was really good. And then the touchdown throw and the catch by Swanee was huge, as well as the throw to DJ. And what excites me about those 3 plays in particular is maybe in the past, or maybe somebody'd say, why isn't he just taking off and running? Well, I love it that his eyes are downfield. I love it that he's keeping plays alive rather than just saying, first read not there, I'm gone. Man, it's an evolution, and he's evolving. And I talked to him yesterday. I thought he got better and better, and I think he's getting more and more comfortable as a quarterback playing every down. And I'm excited because the kid's a competitor. He's a winner, and he loves the challenge of, okay, now I've got to continue to improve. And I see that on a play-by-play basis, and now we've got 2 starts under his belt this year. And so I'm excited about, getting the win and seeing all of our guys continue to improve.
Final thing. Avery at times almost looks timid running. Has he been told about the injury thing? Or
Nope.
I mean, just –
You could ask him about it. Nobody said anything to him. Nobody said anything to him. And now I would tell you, and I hope he would say, hey, if it's in the first quarter, I got to get my tail going and make sure I don't take some unnecessary hits. If it's in the 3rd or 4th quarter, man, I may have to stick it in there and go. I don't know how many of those opportunities that he had. I would tell you that I thought Tulane did a nice job of making sure that you're going to give the football. You're going to give the football. And he's making the correct reads. And so, once again, sample size of plays needs to get a bigger sample size for us.
2 games you've had some long passes, but not a lot to wide receivers. How can you get them more involved moving forward?
I think really just game planning for it. And we do a really good job during the week of our timing and getting stuff on the play sheet. Just kind of in the heat of the moment of the game, sometimes stuff doesn't get called and we don't get everything called that we would wish to. But, I mean, looking forward, I have all the confidence in the world in those guys, and I have all the confidence in the world in myself to be able to push the ball down the field and hope to continue to do that and do that more as the season goes along.
Quarterback, do you get excited when you go up against another team that has a powerful offense and you might need to put up some points yourself?
I mean, I just kind of look at it as every other week, and I mean, I don't really focus on what their offense is going to do. I kind of look more at what their defense is going to do against us and kind of how they might scheme us and game plan for us, and just going to be confident in what the coaches get on the call sheet for us this week and just go out and execute it.
Evaluate the play of Avery Johnson through 2 games.
Well, I still think I have a lot of room to grow and a lot of improvement to be made. Week 1 was very average for me, very average week. And then week 2, I felt like I made steps, but I look to make bigger strides as the season goes on, and especially from week 2 to 3, because that's where some of the biggest strides are made. But, I mean, I'm still young. I still got a lot of improvement to make, but I feel like I'm still really confident in myself. And I mean, 2-0, 3-0 as a starter, so confident where I'm at with my team.
Now we do bring in Ryan Gilbert to feed the deviants. That's right. It's our college football sports betting segment we conclude each podcast with. And it's not a bunch of conference games. There is one, but this is a pretty good slate of 5 games we're picking based on our top 5 games in the Big 12 preview that Lance from our staff puts together. And it's an interesting list of games, Ryan Gilbert. I'm excited.
It's a great list.
Are you going to watch college football on Saturday?
I don't know what else I'm going to do. I guess we got a couple bye weeks this year, of course, but got to take advantage of this while we can, right?
I know. I'm going to watch almost all of these, except, of course, one of them that is also on Friday night with K-State. Well, let's get started with a very interesting one. It was a competitive, physical, dirty game last year in Boulder, but this year, Colorado and all the problems that circus is having, they're going to Colorado State to play in Fort Collins on that field, which is very interesting. Colorado is a 7-point favorite. I wouldn't touch this game in any way. I would never bet on Colorado this season because I feel like they could be really good if they want to be, but often they'll just be horrible. What do you think about this game?
Well, Deion Sanders has only covered a 7-point spread here. He's only won by 7 points twice in his entirety at Colorado, right? So one of those times was against Colorado State last year, but if you remember, Fitz, that's a game that went to overtime, won by 8. That's not really a true convincing cover. And then the other time was that fluky game against Nebraska where the Huskers just had all those turnovers last year. So, Fitz, I'll keep this one short and sweet, man. I don't think Colorado's built to win by more than a touchdown. And every time they've covered a 7-point spread, there's kind of been an asterisk in my mind. And so it's either, like you mentioned, don't bet on Colorado or excuse me, I guess you stay away from it. But I wouldn't bet on Colorado, right?
Right. So you think Colorado State covers?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Okay. They're pretty trashy too. I don't think I'll watch this game. I might check in the manner that you slow down to look at the car wreck. I might do that as I'm flipping through real games. A very interesting game takes place in KCK. UNLV plays Kansas at Children's Mercy Park, Sporting KC's field. Cool venue for a non-conference game. There'll be 20K there yelling their faces off. UNLV's pretty good. They've won some games this year. They're 2-0. And of course, Kansas lost at Illinois. KU comes in as a 7-point favorite. Does KU avoid losing to UNLV? Because you talk about getting your season derailed early on. If they lose and go 1-2 in non-conference, that's stunning, but I don't see it happening. But what do you think?
Quite honestly, I'm ignoring all the X's and O's and, that what's going to happen on the field. The fact that Kansas lost to Illinois, like you mentioned it, you do not want to go 1-2 to start off this season with such high expectations, especially with Daniels being healthy, right? You can't have that happen. And so I'm a big NFL guy, Fitz, me, that's, it's so hard to gain an edge in the NFL just because the talent is so great. The coaches are so great. So a lot of times it's not even about what you see on the field. It's about where the situation that the teams are in right now. You look at Kansas, the situation after losing to Illinois, there's just going to be such a high sense of urgency. Now, don't get me wrong, man. UNLV is good. Like we've talked about them, when they played Houston, right? Week 1, we kind of brushed over it. We saw how good that team can be and is. I'm not going to deny that at all. But just when you look at Kansas here, I love a rebound here with the Lance Leipold coach team. They're not going to start the season 1-2. I guess they're not going to let that happen. They're going to come out locked in on Friday night, and I think pick up a comfortable cover that 7-point spread.
Yep, I tend to agree with you on that. Now we go to one of the most heated rivalries in all of college football, maybe exceeded only by the holy war of BYU and Utah. West Virginia goes to Pitt, and to say that these two schools hate each other is an understatement. People may not realize how close Morgantown is to Pittsburgh. A lot of West Virginia fans live in Pittsburgh. This one gets heated, and this one's in Pittsburgh. But West Virginia, despite losing badly to Penn State, is a 2-point favorite on the road. Who wins this? Because basically, unless it's a 1 or 2 point game, someone's going to get away with this, and I think it will be a touchdown spread on this game. Who do you think it'll be in favor of?
If I had stock in Pittsburgh right now, I'd be selling it after what we saw last weekend. Right now, it obviously come out with a crazy game, but Pittsburgh was down 3-4 touchdowns somewhat early in that game, and give them credit, give the Panthers credit for rallying, coming out with a win. But I would sell that right now. I would get rid of it. I'd be all over West Virginia again. I like West Virginia, but with Pitt, man, they didn't look too great against Kent State, excuse me. And Kent State is turned out to be just an awful team. They lose to St. Francis last weekend. And so I would just get rid of anything Pitt I had right now. I think Pitt, get out while you're ahead if you bet them. I would not feel comfortable. I would feel kind of a letdown spot. Don't let that win fool you. And then also West Virginia, don't let that week 1 game that we all were watching to open up the season against Penn State. Don't let that fool you. I think West Virginia can show something much, much more clean and crisp than what we saw. So I love the Mountaineers here.
Yep, I do too. The first Big 12 game of the season, the first new Big 12 game overall. We've had Baylor at Utah, and of course K-State playing host to Arizona, but those are both non-conference games. You have UCF going to TCU. UCF is a 2.5 point favorite on the road. A little surprised by that, but what say you?
Yeah, you're surprised. TCU did open as the favorite, and so obviously money is coming in on the Knights, and so you're right. I mean, it is a little surprising, but when you look at UCF's rushing attack, that's why the line shifted to where it is. They're number 1 in the country right now through the first 2 games with 419 yards on the ground. So assuming that UCF can establish that running game and get its offense going, Fitz, we saw TCU struggled against Stanford, right? So I think this line moved for a reason, and that's why I got to go with UCF here on the road.
Yeah, I think they're going to do it too. I think this is a huge game for both of those programs to kind of decide what direction they're going in. If TCU loses at home, boy, it doesn't bode well for the future of the program right now. And finally, our 5th and final game. We don't just pick this one last this week because it's K-State. It is literally the best game in the conference. Arizona coming to Manhattan on Friday night. K-State, as we pick this, is a 7.5 point favorite over the other Wildcats. This one's hard to pick. I literally don't know what score I'm going to pick for this game. And I need to provide you my own pick for our other content item. And I haven't decided. I've been telling people I think K-State wins by the spread. So 7 or 8 points. What do you think about this one?
Almost everything that you can say about Kansas State through 2 games is true with Arizona. Like I did the feature behind enemy lines for Jason Scheer with Arizona. And on their message boards, I was peeking over there, and the first comment with a bunch of upvotes is like, you could literally just copy and paste and change the name. And so, it's been a rather ugly. I don't know if ugly is the right word, but both teams have certainly struggled. Just because we've covered K-State, though, obviously we kind of have a lens on, a microscope on this team, and we're studying it thoroughly. For me, I just can't feel comfortable betting Kansas State here. The secondary has to get those issues worked out. And it did, I think, throughout the second half against Tulane. Those issues sort of died down. But, again, it doesn't matter whose fault it was, or was it coaching? None of that matters. As long as K-State can get that fixed, they're going to have a good chance to win this game on Friday. But I need to see it get fixed before I can feel comfortable with Kansas State. I need to see Dylan Edwards on the field for 15, 20 snaps. There's a lot of things. I need to see Avery Johnson deliver some more accurate passes. I need to see the wideouts get more involved. Carver Willis is probably going to play, but Hadley Panzer's not looking too hot for that game on Friday. We learned that on Wednesday with Connor Riley. And so there's just a lot of question marks with Kansas State. Now, I get it. On Arizona's side, if you had the pregame podcast previewing it from their perspective, there's a million question marks that can match everything that K-State's, thinking right now. But for a full touchdown, 7.5 points, I mean, I love that right now you're getting that half point too at a touchdown. So that's a little insurance if Arizona is to lose this game by a touchdown. So too many things that, too many boxes just haven't been checked for me to feel confident enough. I think that this should probably be like a field goal, like a 3-point spread. I think 7 is just a lot of points here based off of what we saw throughout the summer, on the Big 12 Insiders with Big B, everything he was talking about. We know Arizona is supposed to be a pretty darn good team. And so I'm not going to let these two rather poor performances from Arizona for the first 2 games just make me forget about all the hype and confidence that they had heading into the year. And so, again, you can say that with Kansas State, but, I'm just not confident enough to pick the home team. I keep stopping myself, Fitz, from saying the Wildcats because that doesn't do you any good in this preview. But I've got to go Arizona here to cover the spread, and I wouldn't be shocked if Arizona does come into Bill Snyder Family Stadium and pull off the upset.
People didn't want to hear that from you. They're paying big money to watch this thing. They want to hear homerism.
You know what? Wally's going to be. I haven't listened obviously to that segment yet, but I'm sure. And there's your dogs, right? Your dogs are mad at me for picking against Kansas State, but I know Wally, right? Wally's usually the pessimist, right? Yep. So I'm just trying to take some heat off of his back, and I'll take the blame, put the target on my back for the week. Okay, Wally, I'm looking out for you.
There we go. That's Ryan Gilbert, our sports betting expert. You're the expert. You know that? That was a lot of information. Thank you, Ryan Gilbert. Thank you to the rest of the panel. Yep, it's K-State and Arizona, and it's coming up fast because it's not on Saturday. It's Friday night at the Bill, 7 p.m. on Fox. You can check it out on the big channel. It's not a Fox Sports channel. It is Fox Network, and it's a nice window for K-State to be in as they kick off their Fox Friday programming. It's going to be an intense atmosphere, and I know a lot of people were unhappy about Friday night football, but the game's here, and I think those seats will be filled. And I hope if you can't go, you will find a K-State fan to be in your seats because having a packed house is really important. I think one of the things that we don't talk about is the fact that Arizona hasn't been seeing this kind of atmosphere at many venues in the Pac-12. Certainly Utah would have one, but other venues, it's just not quite as important. Washington State, Oregon, and Washington maybe, but often they just don't see big crowds or very intense crowds, even if they are big. This will be intense. This will be loud, and this will be entertaining. I don't know who wins. I feel like the spread's exactly right, and K-State will win by 7. I'm telling you this. If K-State has defensive breakdowns on the back end of this defense again today, like they did last week against Tulane, Arizona's going to score a lot of points. So we'll see what happens at the Bill. I will be there. I hope you will be too. And we appreciate Weddle & Sons Roofing being our sponsor this year for the PowerCat pregame podcast. 7 p.m. Friday night. And I will see you at the Bill.
Thank you for watching GoPowerCat.com's PowerCat pregame podcast, sponsored by Weddle & Sons Roofing. This has been a GoPowerCat.com and Spirit Street production.